Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakaha Gwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure unto the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another lesson. And in this lesson, I'll be profiling a little bit of this video from Patrick Humphrey's YouTube channel titled Leave Right Now, National Guard Deployed, Something Huge is Happening. And in the little bit of this video I'll be playing, Patrick Humphrey is going to go into how recently both Iowa and Illinois, which are right next to each other, have been performing drills involving the National Guard. The one in Illinois being a first ever drill dealing with how the National Guard would react to a grid down or cyber attack situation that would knock out police and federal communications, while in Iowa, the National Guard is being drilled on how to handle a state of civil unrest. And when you think about it, one easily plays into the other. In the event of a major cyber attack, EMP situation that knocks down the U.S. power grid, what would you see? People panicking, people looting, killing each other, violence in the streets, which would necessitate that the National Guard or some other military force be called in to restore order. It's very interesting that drills like this are taking place while you have the authorities talking about EMP, cyber attack, or grid down situations being one of the major issues that the U.S. faces right now, whether it be from so-called domestic terrorists or white supremacists knocking out power transformers like what took place a couple of months ago in, it was either North Carolina or South Carolina, or one of America's major enemies like Russia, China, or North Korea using cyber attacks or EMPs to knock out the power grid. And that would be the perfect cover for this economic collapse, which is taking place as we speak, just like how the C019 covered up the fact that the U.S. economy was on the verge of a recession and an economic collapse as well, and the authorities were able to blame that for accelerating the deterioration of the economic situation globally. But before I play this clip, this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes, and I'm going to start it at the 4-minute and 55-second mark.
On here because this is big news and they're preparing for big things. So we have two different states that are preparing for massive major events. All right, we have Illinois and we have Iowa, and it's what a coincidence that they're right next to each other. So we have Iowa preparing for civil unrest, the National Guard there, and then we have the Illinois National Guard preparing for a major communications disruption statewide, where the police is out, the federal communications are out, all these things are out. This is what they are preparing for. And what are the odds? And this is a brand new drill that they've never done before, and they're now doing it in Illinois because they're getting prepared for a major disaster. That's what they're saying. So this was just posted today, June 5th. You can see here, Illinois National Guard leads multi-agency statewide exercise simulating major disaster. And the cybersecurity unit of the National Guard is the head of this simulation that they are running, okay, in this exercise. And this is what the article says. Members of the Illinois National Guard are working with multiple agencies Monday and Tuesday in an exercise simulating a major disaster that knocks out regular communication systems. How many times do we have to hear this recently? where communication systems are going to go down. Remember, over 50 senators were issued sat phones, satellite phones, in case normal communications go out. We also had top senators warning just last week, I made a whole video on it, that we could see major cyber attacks on seaports and airports as well. So these...
And if there were major cyber attacks that took place on seaports and airports, what would that lead to? Whatever cargo that's being brought in, not being brought in. So empty store shelves. And that, on top of the lights being out in these different cities, the electricity being out, you've got people panicking and running to the stores to try to hoard whatever they can get their hands on. And once those store shelves run out quickly, what are people going to start doing? Breaking into each other's houses, looting and killing each other to get their hands on whatever they can get their hands on. A cyber attack, EMP, or grid down situation would be one of the best events that the elites could use to reset the entire system and be justified in bringing in a state of martial law.
Things are ramping up. We've already seen Dish Network had a major cyber attack, taking out their satellites. They're a satellite communication provider.
And also remember, a couple of years ago, you had the Colonial Pipeline going down due to a so-called cyber attack from Russia, which led to gas stations along the East Coast being down and people not being able to get gas and hoarding whatever gas they could get their hands on. That was a shit show. And imagine a situation where the lights don't come back on in a couple of weeks. How bad things would truly be.
Okay, service provider. And they lost over 80,000 customers from this cyber attack that is still ongoing with Dish Network.
And also, in our chat, a brother had posted a clip about how, I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was one of these experts in this field. And he said that if the U.S. was hit with a EMP cyber attack grid down situation, after 9 months, 90% of the U.S. population would be dead. So you see that this is no little thing if a major EMP cyber attack grid down situation were to take place in the U.S.
So we are getting prepped for something big. You should be getting prepped for something big. And the Iowa National Guard is preparing for social unrest. We will get to that in just a second. But the exercise is dubbed, quote, Prairie Voice, and it sees multiple guard units testing communication capabilities with other organizations at the county, state, and federal level in an emergency. So it's called Prairie Voice. It's running right now, Monday and Tuesday in Illinois, and we need to be prepared. It's simulating a, quote, major disaster that knocks out regular communication systems. And this is a drill they've never done before. This is not an annual exercise. This is a new simulation to a new threat that we are being presented with and we keep getting warned of. So let's dive into what's also happening in Iowa.
Before we get into what's going on in Iowa, I'm going to play some other bits of information because, like I said earlier, over the last couple of years or so, what have we been hearing about? Talks of cyber attacks, EMPs, or grid down situations being a major threat to the U.S. and the globe right now. And like I also said, a cyber attack, grid down situation would be the perfect cover that the elites could use to bring about their GREAT RESET and bring about a state of martial law where they lock everything down. And it just so happens that back in July 8th of 2020, you had Klaus Tissue Schwab talking about the threats of cyber attacks, a cyber PAN pandemic, making the C19 pandemic looking like a walk in the park. And the C019 situation was the perfect cover for the powers that be to take heat off of themselves, and the fact that they were, collapsing the economies of the globe around that time, because before that situation took place, you had people starting to take to the streets and protest their governments due to the declining economic situation. You saw inflation creeping up and a lot of different businesses shutting down. So when the C019 took place, they just blamed all those economic situations on that. And before that took place, you had something called EVENT 201, which was a drill that different major organizations and governments went through, which dealt with how governments of the world would handle a CORONA situation. And then a couple of months later, voila, the exact thing that they drilled took place in real time. So, hey, it's a very big possibility that with all these talks and drills to handle a cyber attack, EMP, or grid down situation taking place right now, hey, down the line, you could see the real thing take place, and that could be the major event they use to take out this old world system and bring in their NW0 system. But this clip with K Tissue Swab that I'm going to play is from the Ice Age Farmer Resources YouTube channel, and it's titled Cyber Attack Worse Than C019 Crisis, Power Grid Down, Banking Offline. And this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole. The COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major.
And look at how destructive that situation was to the global system these last couple of years.
Cyber attack. To use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity to reflect on the lessons the cybersecurity community can draw and improve our preparedness for a potential cyber pandemic.
And now I'm going to play a trailer from a documentary that actor Dennis Quaid came out with in 2022, dealing with the major threats that a cyber attack, EMP, grid down situation would cause to the U.S., and that the U.S. is completely unprepared for it. And the title of that documentary is Grid Down, Power Up. And it's on the YouTube channel, Grid Down, Power Up. And also, this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
The electricity grid goes down. You're back in the 1880s, pre-electricity.
If 1,000 transformers are knocked out, we'll end up with massive social disruption.
top former energy official claims an attack on an American power grid was terrorism.
Virtually every study you'll see has an anarchistic component that leads to rioting. It is almost inevitable.
Like I said at the beginning of the video, one situation would easily play into the other. A grid down, lights out, cyber attack situation would lead to chaos in the streets, anarchy, which would necessitate what? The military being brought in to restore order. And we know that through the scriptures, hey, a situation of civil unrest is going to take place where people are going to be attacking and killing each other, disregarding the authorities, and breaking into each other's houses to get their hands on whatever they can to survive. And when we go back to Patrick Humphrey's video, he's going to talk about that Iowa drill dealing with the National Guard handling a state of civil unrest.
Imagine what will happen if there is no food, no power, and no money, and no transportation. Only people with guns and the boldness to go and take what they need to survive will live.
It could literally end civilization as we know it.
Cyber attack, an EMP, even a massive solar flare. They're all capable of exposing our power grid as America's Achilles heel.
Of particular concern to me are people who believe it's God's will to destroy us.
Our electric power grids are as vulnerable to cyber attack as the thousands upon thousands of businesses, companies, government agencies that have already been hacked over the last few months.
It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when.
We spend $800 billion on our military.
And we're not willing to spend 50 to 100 billion to protect our society?
An EMP pulse is a very dangerous threat. If you're not nuclear hardened, it will shut down any digital computer that is operating in the range of the EMP.
Other countries have appointed a single champion to be in charge of protecting their electric grids.
We know what needs to be done. It's just a matter of a will to do it.
And if this situation does take place to where the power grid in the entire country and even outside the U.S. globally takes place, best believe it isn't going to be from domestic terrorists or America's enemies. This is going to be an orchestrated event from the powers that be to bring about their GREAT RESET, that fourth industrial revolution. Remember, EVENT 201 that took place a couple of months before the global C019 situation. We are not ignorant of Satan's devices, as it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11, lest Satan, the physical counterpart of the spiritual demon Satan, these Edomites, or so-called white people, beginning with their elites, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Gettys, the Aldriches, the Carnegies, etc., should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. When the spirit of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is dealing with you, when you see situations like this taking place, talks of drills or documentaries coming out or anything like that, you know that the official story they're pushing out is not the truth. Behind the scenes is really the powers that be, the elites, orchestrating everything to bring about their desired results. Hegelian dialectics. They create two opposing forces to create this to result in the situation that they want to bring about, which in this case is their NW0. This is Revelation chapter 12, verse 12. Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil, or that deceiver, again, Esau, Edom, beginning with the elites, is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And the the elites of these Edomites are about to come down in great wrath, because they do know that they have but a short time to establish their NW0. They see the children of Israel waking back up and calling on their power, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, and they see the prophets of the Most High, the men of the Lord, out on the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this. And they understand the scriptures and know that when these events take place, whatever heathen nation that's ruling at the time is going to be taken out of power. And they also know that they are the Edomites, and what the fate of the Edomites are when they're taken out of power. 1,000 years of hardcore bondage and slavery before their entire nation is permanently taken off the face of the earth. So this devil is about to pull out all the stops to bring about his NW0, his GREATRESET, and try to stop biblical prophecy from coming to its fulfillment. And it would seem that one of the easiest ways to fast track their goals would be a cyber attack, a EMP grid down situation. Because what would that do? That would destroy every aspect of society, the economy, overnight. It would create chaos, which would necessitate for them to bring in a state of martial law. And they could also easily bring in a new system, because people would be begging for something to save them from the chaos that's taken place. And that new system would involve everyone getting that charagma in Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 to 18, the MARKOFTHEBEAST, which is the RFID/NFC MICROCHIPIMPLANT, hey, in their hands or in their foreheads. And then besides all these drills and documentaries and talks of cyber attacks taking place, what are we also seeing? Talks of these different governments instituting a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, because they want to move this whole system from fiat currencies to digital currencies, to where you will be completely locked on the grid and you will be the perfect goyim or cattle in society. And if you try to buck up, talk against the government, or do anything against the system, they can simply cut off your digital funds by cutting off your charagma, and you won't be able to buy or sell, travel abroad, get a job, or do anything in society. But let's go back to that clip on Patrick Humphrey's YouTube channel. And now he's going to go into the drill taking place in Iowa involving the National Guard handling a state of civil unrest. And remember what was said in the trailer for that Dennis Quaid documentary. A grid down situation would lead to chaos, anarchy, civil unrest in the streets, where those with the guns would be calling all the shots. I'm going to back it up a little bit.
New simulation to a new threat that we are being presented with and we keep getting warned of. So let's dive into what's also happening in Iowa as well, right next to Illinois. What are the odds that the Iowa National Guard is preparing for this as well? So check out what they're preparing for. And this is apparently an annual exercise, but the timing of it is very suspect. This was also posted on June 5th as well. It says security forces conduct domestic operations training. And it says we've been tasked from the National Guard Bureau to provide 26-person response element for domestic operations involving riots, site security, and quick reaction. All right, so the Iowa National Guard is preparing for, quote, riots, site security, and quick reaction. And they're saying, quote, we ask volunteers from across base to act like angry people, to throw things and to yell, and to give our defenders an opportunity to deal with a large crowd that we can provide. Okay. It also says, Larson explained training is important so they can appropriately use force and resolve civil disorder situations in the safest manner possible. All right, this is what the Iowa National Guard, this is posted on their own website, the Iowa National Guard website. See here, Air National Guard, you probably can't see it, but this is posted on their own website just today, June 5th, 2023. And they are getting prepared for, quote, to use, quote, force and resolve civil disorder situations in the safest possible manner. And they're getting ready for riots, site security, and quick reaction. So our governments, I said this last video, I believe, how the government, they are the biggest.
That's it with this video. You get the point. But hey, whether it be from a cyber attack, economic collapse, or anything like that, civil unrest will take place on the streets of the United States of America. Looting, killing, all manner of horrors will happen. The military will be called in, and this is all a part of biblical prophecy. Now I'm going to go to 2nd Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to start at verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword in their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another. And that one people standing up and fighting against another can go into many things. One race of people standing up and fighting against another, because racial skirmishes will take place. As it says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, nation rising against nation. One political class of people going against another, Republicans versus Democrats, left versus right, red versus blue, conservative versus liberal, a class warfare with the poor going against the rich, and hey, your average everyday Americans going against those in the government, whether it be the politicians or the authorities. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And the modern day sword, especially in the United States of America, is that gun. And what would be one of the perfect events that would just fast track all this and create a state of complete chaos in the United States of America? A grid down, cyber attack, EMP situation. Knock out the lights, the transportation, medical services, communications, etc., etc. For there shall be sedition among men. And the definition for the word sedition is conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. And your modern day kings and princes are your people in the government. Mayors, governors, senators, presidents, prime ministers, as well as the authorities that uphold the system, like the military, including the National Guard, or the police. When whatever takes place to create a state of chaos on the streets of America takes place, people are going to be desperate out here and not give a damn whether you've got a badge or military gear on. When it comes to feeding themselves and their loved ones, they're going to do anything that's necessary, as it's about to say, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Every man is going to do what seems right in his eyes in these times. Verse 17, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. And what does that sound like? A state of martial law. And as we saw in Patrick Humphrey's video, in Iowa and in Illinois, the National Guard is running drills on how to deal with a grid down situation in a state of civil unrest. And when a major situation of civil unrest takes place, what happens? A state of martial law to lock everything down and keep people in check. Just look at what happened with that Boston Marathon bombing many years ago. When that took place, they locked that entire city down. And also, hey, the C-019. Cities were locked down, and in some places, you had police patrolling the streets, and if somebody walked outside, they shot them with pepper spray-filled paintballs. But in these times, hey, those guns aren't going to be shooting paintballs. They're going to be shooting hot lead. 18, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. All these calamities are coming because it's Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai judging you people for all the wickedness you've been committing and the great pride you've been walking in. Hey, just look at the month we're in right now. That's one of the greatest forms of rebellion and pride and arrogance against the Most High. Verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread or food and for great tribulation. And as Patrick Humphrey talked about, there have been talks of cyber attacks on airports and seaports, which, like I said earlier, if that took place, that would mean that cargo and other goods wouldn't get to these store shelves, which would lead to empty store shelves. And once people ransack those shelves, what would they start doing? Having no pity upon their neighbors and destroying their houses with the sword, breaking into them to spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. And a grid down cyber attack would be a state of great tribulation out here. Because like Tishy Schwab said, it would knock out everything in society: communications, transportation, medical services, and the economy. And real quick, back in that documentary, what did they say would take place in the event of a grid down situation?
Terrorism.
Virtually every study you'll see has an anarchistic component that leads to rioting. It is all.
And one people shall stand up and fight against another with swords in their hands.
Almost inevitable.
Imagine what will happen if there is no food, no power, and no money, and no transportation. Only
a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the force of the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation.
people with guns and the boldness to go and take what they need to survive will live.
With swords in their hands. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.